Hello. The Divine Code reading for November 1st, pages 293 and 294. Prohibition of meat from a living animal, the introduction. We're in the middle of the introduction by Joe M. Regenstein, Professor of Food Science, Head of Cornell Kosher and Halal Food Initiative, Department of Food Service, Cornell University. Continuing in the introduction. In our generation, humanity has begun to re-examine many of its core values. And one outcome has been an increasingly concern for establishing governmental and corporate standards for animal welfare. And for some, the relevance of animal rights in this process. So it is important that we now look closely and seriously at the guidance provided by the Torah's Noahide Code in this particular area. So today's day, technology has been rushing ahead at such an alarming rate that it's causing people to rethink everything. I mean, in the past, life went at such a slower pace that people just really didn't think about things as much. They didn't think about the underlying purpose of things. They didn't think, what are we doing? What is the ethics of what we're doing? Because it was always done that way. Today, things change in such a way that to make sense of the change, it becomes necessary to rethink things that otherwise would have been taken for granted. As has been the practice in Jewish law for over the approximately 3,300 years since the giving of the Torah through Moses, the implementation of any of one of God's commandments has always been carefully considered, including all of the details and ramifications. Throughout Jewish history, this process has been applied to the Noahide Code, just as to virtually all other subjects within the oral tradition of the Torah. Various expert sages and rabbis over the course of time taught and recorded their codifications, commentaries, responsa, and thereby provided clarifications and explanations of the fundamental text of the oral Torah, which include the Mishnah and Talmud, the Mishnah Torah of Maimonides, Rambam, etc. Furthermore, new situations arise over the generations which need to be ruled upon based on the principles of the existing rulings that cover the full spectrum of Torah law. Over time, some of these opinions are accepted by the majority of leading rabbis and become normative, while others are not widely accepted and assume a status of minority opinions. So over 3,000 years, there has been a lot of discussion, a lot of study, a lot of discussion, a lot of working out the details of the Torah. The Torah itself, as it's given in the 5 books of Moses, that's the beginning book of the Bible. The beginning 5 books of the Bible is very compact. It doesn't go into a lot of detail as to how to apply these things in day-to-day life. These details of how to apply them to day-to-day life are worked through the oral Torah, either the oral tradition that was given to Moses at Sinai, or what the rabbis have developed, have worked through over the centuries and over the millennia. It should be noted that many of these, the rabbis have primarily studied out what applies to the Jewish law for the Jewish people. They've also worked out ideas concerning how it applies to the non-Jew. Not necessarily specifically for the case of the non-Jew, but rather how does the Jew understand what they're doing? So it's the knowledge that about how it is for the non-Jew has been largely auxiliary to the work that the rabbis have been working on. So they know things, but it wasn't developed for the sake of the non-Jew. And that's what's being worked on now that there are non-Jews interested in the Torah, which hasn't happened in a long time. The rabbis are working through how to apply the knowledge of the Torah specifically for non-Jews. This important volume, that's what's referring to the Divine Code, reviews the many available traditional sources that deal with the issues of the Noahide Code for Gentiles. This section of the work then takes the broad principle of Aver Mem Hakai, that's limb of a living animal, and presents the meat, pun intended, on this issue, covering as many details and extended topics in the traditional format of rabbinic scholarship. So there's a traditional format that books use. Now it's a little there's some variance to that traditional format, but there's basic step-by-step and topical ways of approaching it, and that's what the Divine Code uses. The Divine Code uses the methodology that has been used for describing halakhic issues. The author has applied fundamental principles from many sources for these issues, and in this process, he has thus resolved standing differences of opinion on key points of practical observance in regard to permission or restriction and strictness or leniency. Thus, the work provides the reader with the most comprehensive and up-to-date guide for meeting and understanding the requirements of the Noahide Code. For those seeking to live in accordance with the eternal commandments that God gave through Moses, we need to understand the implications of both the entire Noahide Code, and this particular section is critical. As readers will see, many of the modern public issues being discussed in the realm of animal welfare with respect to slaughter, pre-slaughter handling, and post-slaughter waiting for the animal to expire are covered by this detailed and well-written text. It now becomes a source for providing guidance to all consumers, along with the regulators and overseers of the modern meat industry. And it challenges all of us to be concerned with improving the handling of animals, both on the farm and in our communities, and most importantly, in the area of the compassionate use of animals for human food. With the release of this work, this can now be approached in keeping with the modern industry guidelines for animal welfare, while also meeting the ancient but continuously relevant rules for Aver Mem Hakai. So The idea is that these rules, these Torah rules that have existed for thousands of years can be used or should be used as a guidance for navigating the modern animal and food industry. Things are changing so rapidly within the food industry that we're not really able to think it out easily upon our own understanding what needs to be done. I mean, many of the issues of limb from a living animal would not have been thought about in an old slaughterhouse. They just didn't cut the animals up that quickly. They didn't have the technology. They didn't have the chain. It was not set up that it would be done so quickly. Therefore, it was never an issue. Today, we have factory slaughterhouses that can cut animals up very quickly if they allow it to happen. Therefore, when we're rethinking what it is that we're doing, we can use the Torah as a structure to make sure we're doing it correctly. And whatever changes occur with technology can be looked at. Also, factory farms. The entire modern system, we need some guidance. We need like a higher power ethical system that we use to determine how we're gonna work in the modern world. And that's that. The professor is explaining that the rules of Torah are that higher power ethical system. Thank you.